You have to see this, it's urgent. My sister Chloe's voice cut through the noise of my busy morning like a siren. I looked up from my laptop in the cozy corner of my favorite cafe, the one I went to every Saturday before work. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the soft hum of conversations around me, but something in her tone told me this was no ordinary call. "Slow down, Chloe, what's going on?" I asked, already bracing myself for bad news. By the way, before we dive in, tell me in the comments, ever seen someone get the revenge they really deserved? I read all of them. Hey, while you're here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let's continue. I'm Julia, by the way, a 34-year-old Jason-eating executive who prides herself on keeping calm under pressure. Life hasn't always been easy, but I know how to fight smart and stay in control. It's Jason, she said hesitantly, like she couldn't find the words. You know your fiancé. My breath caught. What about him? There's a video circulating, he's proposing, but not to you. For a moment I sat frozen, the warm latte untouched, the background chatter fading into silence. Then Chloe sent me the link. I stared, heart pounding, as Jason knelt down on one knee in that beautiful garden where we were supposed to get married next summer. Only, the woman in his arms wasn't me. I didn't recognize her, but the hurt in my chest was sharp enough to pierce through years of trust. I need to see this for myself, I whispered. Jason had always been charming, too charming, some might say. I met him 3 years ago at a conference. He was ambitious, confident, and had this laugh that could light up a room. Our relationship was intense, but I always believed in us. I was careful with my heart, and I believed he was careful with mine. Yet here I was, unraveling in a quiet cafe, betrayed in the most public, humiliating way possible. Later that day, back at my downtown apartment, I couldn't get the image out of my head. The woman smiling as Jason slid the ring onto her finger, the tears in his eyes. What was it all about? I had confronted him just last week about starting wedding plans. Did he lie then too? My phone buzzed. It was Liam, my closest friend and colleague at work. Hey Jules, you okay? You sound off. I took a shaky breath. I just found out Jason's been seeing someone else. His voice was firm, protective. What? That's insane, you don't deserve that. I know, but the worst part, he's proposing to her. There was silence. Then Liam said, Julia, this isn't just about heartbreak. This is about control. He's trying to erase you. I clenched my fists. Liam knew me well enough to see I wasn't about to break. Not if I have anything to say about it. That evening, I sat in my quiet living room, the city lights flickering through the window. The betrayal felt suffocating. What kind of man would do this? What kind of family would stand by him? My mom's voice echoed in my head. Julia, sometimes family chooses power over truth. And Jason's family had always been powerful, wealthy, with connections that could drown out any scandal. His father, a ruthless business magnate, had made it clear from the start. Our marriage was a transaction, not a union of love. It was crushing. I looked at the engagement ring on my finger, the one I'd almost believed was the symbol of our future. What future? The question burned deep. How does someone propose to you while seeing someone else? And what do you do when the whole world is about to celebrate a lie? I wasn't about to let this go quietly. But how do you fight someone who's already playing your life like a game? Someone who believes they own the narrative? I felt a surge of defiance rise within me. If Jason and his family thought they could humiliate me, erase me, I was ready to make them regret it. The night was long, my thoughts racing. One thing was clear, I needed allies. People I could trust. People who saw the truth beneath the surface. There was Chloe, my sister, fierce and loyal. Liam, who knew the corporate battlefield better than anyone. And then there was Sarah, my best friend since college, always the voice of reason and fire when I needed it most. But would that be enough? The phone rang again. This time it was Jason's father, a cold voice, polite but dangerous. Julia, we should talk before things get out of hand. I swallowed hard. Talk. After everything, I didn't answer. Instead, I stared at the ring again and smiled to myself, bitter but certain. If they wanted a war, they would get one. But it wouldn't be on their terms. So I ask you, what would you do if the man you planned to marry not only betrayed you but tried to erase your existence with a public lie? Would you crumble, or would you fight back harder than ever before, because this is just the beginning? The next morning, the weight of last night's revelations didn't lift. If anything, it settled deeper. Jason's betrayal wasn't just a careless mistake, it was calculated, deliberate. And it wasn't just him. His entire world seemed stacked against me. I met Chloe at our usual spot, a small diner downtown where the coffee was strong and the booths offered a bit of privacy. She slid into the seat opposite me, eyes flashing with quiet fire. "You have no idea what I found," she said, sliding her phone across the table. I picked it up, the screen lighting up with photos and messages that confirmed everything. Jason's duplicity was woven into every pixel. There was the morning text to me, "Can't wait for our weekend," timestamped alongside a message to another woman, Sarah, his supposed other, saying, "See you tonight." Chloe's voice was low but fierce. "He's been living a double life for months." I swallowed hard, months, and I thought he was committed. Chloe shook her head. "He never was, and it gets worse. His sister Isabella told me that their family's been covering for him. They know about Sarah." Isabella, the name hit me hard. I'd met her once at a holiday party, polite but distant and clearly loyal to Jason. "His family, they're protecting him," my voice cracked with disbelief. Chloe nodded grimly. "Yeah, they told Isabella to keep quiet, said it was for the family's reputation. They're ruthless, Jules. You're not just up against Jason, you're up against the whole dynasty." The words settled like a stone in my stomach. Power, influence, money, things I didn't have. And yet I wasn't ready to fold. Later that day, Liam met me at the office. His usual easygoing demeanor was replaced with a sharp edge I'd rarely seen. "Tell me everything," he demanded, eyes scanning my face for every detail. I sighed, trying to stay steady. "Jason's engagement, it's fake. He's been seeing Sarah for months. His family's covering it up, protecting him, and planning to push through with the wedding anyway." Liam's jaw tightened. "That's beyond messed up, and you're still planning to go ahead with this." "I'm not going to let him humiliate me," I said, voice firm. "Not publicly, not ever." He nodded approvingly. "Good, because you're going to need a plan, and people who aren't afraid to back you up." Just then, Sarah walked into the office, her bright presence cutting through the tension like sunlight. She dropped her bag on my desk and looked at me seriously. "I heard about Jason," she said quietly, "and Chloe's texts. Julia, you don't have to do this alone." "I'm not," I assured her, grateful for her support. "I'm putting together my team." Sarah smiled, eyes fierce. "Good, because it's going to get ugly." And she was right. Over the next few days, the truth about Jason's manipulations came pouring out. It wasn't just the cheating. He lied about work trips, gaslighted me when I questioned him, and even insulted my closest friends behind their backs. One evening, Chloe and I sat in my living room, piecing together a timeline of Jason's lies. I couldn't believe the man I thought I knew had this many faces. "He has this habit," Chloe said, shaking her head, "of always smiling when he's lying. That fake, 'I'm sorry but I'm better than you' smile." I laughed bitterly. "Yeah, that one. I saw it plenty of times." Chloe's voice softened. "He's a master manipulator, Jules, but so are you." Her words sparked something inside me, a flicker of strength I hadn't felt in days. That week, Isabella, Jason's sister, reached out unexpectedly. Her voice was cautious but tinged with guilt. "Julia, I'm sorry about everything. I hate how my family is handling this. If you need someone on the inside, I'm here." I hesitated, then replied, "Isabella, I'm not looking for enemies or drama. But if you want to help me bring the truth to light, I'm listening." She paused. "I will, but be careful. The stakes are higher than you think." The message was clear. Jason's family was a fortress and I was the intruder, but I wasn't going to back down. That night, lying awake, I whispered to myself, "They think they have all the power. But I have the truth." And that truth was going to set everything on fire. Would the family's empire crumble under the weight of their secrets, or would they bury me before I got the chance? Either way, I was ready to fight. It was after midnight when I finally sat down with my thoughts, the city lights flickering like distant stars outside my apartment window. The betrayal had burned through my trust, but it hadn't consumed me. Not yet. I replayed Isabella's words in my head, the cautious voice, the hint of guilt, the warning about stakes higher than I imagined. I realized this wasn't just about a cheating fiancé or a broken engagement. It was a chess game, and I had to learn the rules fast if I wanted to survive. A flashback hit me 6 months ago during a routine meeting at work. I was reviewing campaign reports with Liam when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jason, "Busy tonight but thinking of you." Simple, sweet, I smiled. But then the next message popped up immediately after, "Dinner with Sarah, can't wait." I hadn't noticed the double texts then. I pushed it aside, too busy, too hopeful. But now I saw the pattern. The silent war behind the scenes, the carefully crafted lies. I glanced around my living room. Stacks of work papers, my laptop open to the campaign I'd been leading, and my phone buzzing with messages from Chloe, Liam, and Sarah, each ready to help. I was far from powerless. The next morning, Sarah showed up at my door, coffee and a determined look in hand. "You look like you've been through a storm," she said, handing me the cup. I took it gratefully. "Feels like I have. But I'm ready to fight." Sarah's eyes gleamed. "Good, because you're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting to expose a lie that's bigger than you think." We sat down, going over the plans I'd been sketching out quietly. I knew I needed more than just words. I needed evidence, allies, and a strategy that would hit Jason where it hurt. "First," I said, "we find everything we can: texts, emails, photos. Anything that shows his double life." Liam had already started digging at work, using his contacts to search for any unusual activity around Jason's schedule. Chloe was rallying mutual friends, quietly probing for whispers and rumors. Then Isabella surprised me again with a message. "I have something, let's meet." We met at a small cafe, the kind that felt anonymous enough to keep secrets. Isabella looked nervous but resolute. "What do you have?" I asked. She pulled out a flash drive. "Proof, emails between Jason and Sarah, financial transactions, hotel bookings, the works." I stared at it, heart pounding. This was the breakthrough I needed. Isabella hesitated. "But you have to be careful, my family won't let this go quietly." I nodded slowly. "I'm not here to destroy anyone's life unnecessarily. I just want the truth out." Isabella sighed. "I understand, and I want to help." As she left, I felt a mix of relief and rising tension. The plan was no longer just a thought, it was real. Back home, I started compiling the files, cross-referencing dates, messages, and receipts. I began crafting a timeline that would unravel Jason's entire facade. But it wasn't just about the evidence. It was about control. Jason had always believed he controlled the narrative, his family, his future, even my reputation. That had to end. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Jason himself. "Julia, stop this before it gets ugly." I smiled bitterly, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could respond with anger or fear, but instead I typed calmly, "I'm done being quiet." Later, Liam stopped by the apartment with a stack of folders, legal documents, contacts for private investigators, everything I might need if this escalated. "We need to cover all bases," he said. "If they push back, we'll be ready." Sarah leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "And when the time comes, you'll be the one controlling the room, Julia, not them." Their confidence bolstered me. I wasn't just preparing to expose Jason, I was preparing to reclaim my power. But the hardest part was keeping my calm in front of people who didn't yet know the truth. At work, I played the part of the composed, Jason-eating exec, smiling and nodding during meetings, my mind racing with strategies. My team noticed the slight edge in my tone, but no one guessed why. One afternoon, Chloe called me urgently. "Julia, you need to hear this. Isabella just told me Jason's family is mobilizing lawyers and private security. They're planning to intimidate anyone who talks." The cold reality hit me hard. The enemy was ruthless. "I expected nothing less," I replied, voice steady, "but they're underestimating me." That night, as I stared out over the city skyline, I whispered a promise to myself. "They think they're untouchable, but every empire has its cracks." The road ahead was dangerous, filled with uncertainty and risks. But I was ready to walk it, because sometimes the most powerful weapon is the truth, and I was about to wield it. The day I decided to make my move, I felt a strange mixture of calm and fierce determination. For months, I had gathered every shred of evidence, every whispered secret, every betrayal laid bare. Now it was time to turn that knowledge into power. I started by sending a carefully worded email to Jason's wedding planner, not revealing my identity, but attaching a folder titled "Critical Information, Please Review." Inside were pictures, texts, and financial receipts clearly showing Jason's affair and his double life. The planner's role was crucial. If the wedding went ahead under false pretenses, it would become my public battlefield. That afternoon, I met Chloe and Liam at a quiet restaurant near my office. Chloe, ever the strategist, had already contacted a few journalists known for exposing scandals. Liam was coordinating with a legal team, ready to advise on any fallout. "So how long until this all goes live?" Chloe asked, sliding a tablet toward me. I swiped through the files again. "Soon, but I want to control the timing." Liam smirked. "Like a true Jasonter." Sarah joined us a bit later, the fire in her eyes matching the resolve in mine. "Jason won't know what hit him," she said, folding her arms. but don't let this turn into a circus. Trust me, I said. I'm not interested in drama, just truth. Behind my calm, however, I was preparing for the inevitable fallout. Jason was dangerous, not just a liar, but a man used to getting his way by bulldozing anyone who challenged him. That evening, I sat in my apartment, phone in hand, heart racing. I called Isabella for the final confirmation. Are you absolutely sure this is all authentic? I asked. Isabella's voice was firm. I triple-checked. There's no way they can deny it. I smiled to myself. Good, because I'm going to make sure everyone knows. The next morning, the email landed on the wedding planner's desk, and within hours, whispers began to circulate. The planner, stunned by the evidence, quietly put a hold on all arrangements pending further review. Jason's first reaction was disbelief. He called me, voice dripping with condescension. Julia, this is ridiculous. You're ruining everything. I felt a flash of amusement. No, Jason, you did that yourself. He tried to intimidate me. You're playing a dangerous game, you don't know what you're up against. I leaned forward, voice steady and sharp. No, Jason, I know exactly who you are, and I'm done being your victim. Days passed and Jason's facade began to crack. The family sent lawyers trying to silence everyone involved, but my network was stronger. One afternoon, I got a message from the wedding planner. Julia, the whole event is on pause, people are talking, the truth is out. I allowed myself a small, victorious smile. At work, the tension was palpable. I handled meetings with a new edge, sharper and more confident. Colleagues noticed the change, some impressed, others wary. Jason, on the other hand, was losing control. I heard through the grapevine that he was lashing out behind closed doors, blaming everyone but himself. One evening, Chloe and I shared a rare laugh over drinks. You should have seen his face when the planner called him, she said, shaking her head. I smirked like a kid caught stealing. Chloe raised her glass. To the truth. To the truth, I echoed, feeling a surge of strength. But the real satisfaction came during a confrontation at a charity gala a few nights later. Jason arrived, confident and smug, unaware that several people already knew his secret. As he approached me, I greeted him with a polite smile. Julia, he said, trying to mask his unease. This isn't over. I leaned in, voice low but cutting. Oh, Jason, it's just beginning. The guests around us exchanged glances, whispers fluttering like wildfire. The man who once held so much power was shrinking before my eyes. Later, as I watched from across the room, Jason's expression twisted from anger to panic. The empire his family had built was showing cracks, and I was the one holding the hammer. I caught Liam's eye across the room, and he gave me a nod of approval. This was the intellectual strike I had promised myself, a calculated, unrelenting assault using nothing but truth and preparation. No shouting, no threats, just the cold, undeniable facts. And it was working. That night, as I finally closed my laptop, I felt a calm wash over me. I was one step ahead. I had played my hand with precision. But somewhere deep down, I knew the fight was far from over. Because in battles like these, the hardest blows come when you least expect them. Still, I was ready. The day the legal papers arrived was the day the game truly changed. I had anticipated a battle, but nothing prepared me for the cold efficiency with which Jason's family lawyers moved. It was clear they were playing for keeps. I sat at my kitchen table, the weight of thick documents spread before me. Contracts, confidentiality agreements, threats veiled thinly in legal jargon. It was a fortress built to silence me. But for every clause meant to intimidate, I had a counter. Liam was already at my side, flipping through the papers with a sharp eye. This is all standard fare for corporate battles, he said, running a hand through his hair. But they've overplayed their hand. Look here, this email chain from Jason's assistant confirms he knowingly lied about his whereabouts during key dates. I nodded, and Isabella's evidence backs it up. We have witnesses, financial records, everything we need. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was my resolve. The following day, the first legal meeting took place. I was calm but ready. Sitting across from a room full of stern-faced lawyers representing the powerhouse family, I felt their confidence like a physical wall. But I was armed with truth and preparation. One of the senior attorneys spoke first, his voice cold and measured. Miss Reynolds, you understand the gravity of your accusations. Without indisputable evidence, these claims could be deemed defamatory. I met his gaze steadily. I don't just have evidence, I have witnesses, emails, photos, and financial documents. We're prepared to present everything in court if necessary. The room tensed. Liam leaned in quietly, whispering, "You're doing great." Keep this up. I nodded, the fire burning inside me. Days later, a private investigator we hired came through with testimony from hotel staff and caterers who had been unknowingly involved in Jason's secret meetings. The picture was clear: Jason was living a lie and no one in his family was innocent. During a follow-up meeting, I presented the compiled evidence. The lead attorney's face paled slightly as I laid out the timeline, connecting the dots with precision. "You've been thorough," he admitted grudgingly, "but I'm afraid this case will not settle quietly." Outside the courtroom doors, reporters had already caught wind of the scandal. Photos of Jason and Sarah, once hidden, were now splashed across tabloids. My phone buzzed incessantly, messages of support, threats, and everything in between. I stayed focused, blocking out the noise. One afternoon, during a break in negotiations, Jason himself appeared unexpectedly at my office building. His face was a mask of fury and desperation. "Julia, stop this madness. Think about what you're doing." I met him calmly in the lobby. "What I'm doing is standing up for myself, for the truth." He stepped closer, voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this." I didn't flinch. "I already regret trusting you." His lips curled in a bitter sneer as he turned away. That same day, Isabella sent me a message. "Be careful, they're escalating. I heard they're trying to intimidate Chloe." My chest tightened. Jason's family had no limits. I immediately called Chloe. "Are you okay?" I asked, anxiety creeping into my voice. "I'm fine," she said, but the tremor betrayed her. "They showed up at my work asking questions." "I'm coming over. We'll figure this out together." As I drove through the city, I thought about how far this had gone. What started as a personal betrayal was now a full-scale war, but I wasn't backing down. That evening, with Liam and Sarah, we fortified our plans. Lawyers, investigators, and trusted friends formed a shield around me. "You're not just fighting Jason," Sarah said firmly. "You're fighting an entire system designed to protect him." I clenched my fists. "Then we'll break that system." Weeks of hearings, negotiations, and tense standoffs followed. The courtroom became my battlefield, and every statement I made chipped away at the armor Jason's family had built. Jason's reaction was as miserable as it was predictable. I heard he was skipping meetings, lashing out at colleagues, and retreating into himself. But with every legal victory, every witness statement accepted, every document validated, I felt stronger. One evening, Chloe and I sat in my living room, exhausted but victorious in small ways. "They're losing," Chloe said softly. "Yes," I agreed, sipping my tea, "and I'm just getting started." As the legal tide turned, one question lingered. How far would they go to stop me, and would justice truly be served? Only time would tell. The collapse was swift, brutal, and utterly complete. Jason's world, once a fortress built on privilege, deception, and ruthless ambition, crumbled beneath his feet like a house of cards. It was a slow-motion unraveling, but every piece that fell exposed the rot inside. The first to fall was his career. Word leaked through the grapevine and the media with merciless speed. Thanks to the mountain of legal evidence and the relentless media coverage, Jason was swiftly removed from his position at the family company. Board members who had once fawned over him now looked away, refusing even to meet his eyes. Rumors of frozen assets, mounting debts, and investigations into financial misdeeds began to swirl. At a business luncheon, I overheard a hushed conversation. A former colleague leaned close and whispered, "He's finished. No one wants to be caught near his scandal." The empire that Jason's family had built so carefully and arrogantly was crumbling, starting with him. But losing his job was just the beginning. The media frenzy didn't stop at the affair. Tabloids and investigative journalists dug deep into the family's secrets, decades of lies, manipulation, and cutthroat power plays. Jason's name was linked with every scandal unearthed. His reputation was in ruins, a public spectacle of shame. Even his closest family began to distance themselves. The family dinners turned cold, invitations disappeared. They who once praised him now turned their backs. I remember sitting in my living room one evening, the TV glowing with his face plastered across the screen. The confident, arrogant man I'd once known was gone, replaced by a shell of regret and shame. The proud smile wiped away by humiliation. Meanwhile, I wasn't alone. Chloe, Liam, Sarah, and a circle of trusted friends formed an unbreakable support system. Their loyalty contrasted sharply with Jason's isolation. While he retreated into darkness, lost in his own lies, I emerged stronger, freed by truth, by justice, by survival. But the collapse wasn't just material or reputational, it was deeply mental. I heard from mutual contacts how Jason was spiraling, lashing out in anger, pacing his mansion in sleepless nights, trying desperately to rewrite the narrative in his mind. A man drowning in guilt, denial, and self-justification. One evening, Chloe told me quietly he called Sarah, begged her to come back, but she hung up on him. That moment struck me with bittersweet satisfaction. The final confirmation came in a message I received unexpectedly one afternoon from Sarah herself. "Thank you for giving me the courage to leave. I'm free now." Her words felt like the last nail in the coffin of Jason's deceit. Despite the pain, the heartbreak, and the battle, I found a strange sense of peace in knowing justice was served, not through hatred or violence, but through patience, truth, and resilience. Jason's complete collapse was not just a personal victory, it was a testament to the strength of standing up to lies and fighting back with dignity. As for me, I was ready to rebuild my life from the ashes, stronger and wiser than ever before. Months passed since the dust settled, and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. The wounds left by betrayal and public scandal were still fresh, but the sharp edges had softened. I had emerged from the storm not as a broken woman, but as someone stronger, someone who had reclaimed her power. One afternoon, I received an unexpected email invitation from the CEO of a respected Jasoniting firm. They'd heard about my work during the crisis and wanted to offer me a leadership role to head a new department focused on ethical business practices and transparency. I sat back, stunned. It was more than a job offer, it was a recognition of everything I had fought for. At our first meeting, the CEO said, "Julia, your strength and integrity through everything have been inspiring. We need more leaders like you." The words warmed me. It was a fresh start, one built on honesty and resilience. I wasn't alone on this journey. Chloe, Liam, and Sarah remained my closest allies, reminders of loyalty and friendship that weathered even the harshest storms. Together, we often reflected on how far we'd come. One evening, as we sat around a small dinner table in my apartment, Chloe raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said. "To truth," I added, smiling. Sarah chimed in, "and to never letting anyone else write your story." The room filled with laughter and hope. I found myself more willing to open up about my experience, not just with friends, but by speaking at events about ethics in business, personal resilience, and standing up to injustice. Sharing my story wasn't easy, but it felt necessary. I wanted others to know that even when life shatters your world, you can rebuild stronger and wiser. The ring Jason gave me, the symbol of lies, sat in a small box on my shelf. Sometimes I looked at it, a reminder of pain and betrayal, but more often it reminded me of my journey from victim to victor. As I held that ring, I realized the truth it represented, that no matter how deeply someone wounds you, your worth and strength come from within. On a quiet morning, I walked through a local park, sunlight filtering through the trees. The world felt vast and full of possibilities. I smiled to myself, thinking, this is my story now, not his. And with that thought, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years, a promise to myself that I would always choose truth, strength, and hope. Because sometimes, the greatest power comes from rising after the fall.